I stepped out of the family court building in downtown Chicago. The concrete steps were still damp from the morning rain, and the sky was a pale, ashen gray blanketing the city. The biting wind whipped a few strands of hair across my cheek, so cold that I could clearly hear the beating of my own heart. In my hand was the freshly printed divorce decree, still warm from the printer, yet it felt as cold as an old newspaper. He stood one step above me. His name was Chase, just Chase. A crisp, sharp name, much like the way he handled everything in life, fast and ruthlessly clean. Chase looked down at me. It was a look I had grown accustomed to over the past year. Not quite contempt, not quite hatred. It was the way one looks at an old household appliance, knowing it was once useful, but now finding it obsolete and in the way. He wore a crisp white dress shirt, perfectly creased slacks, and a gleaming luxury watch on his wrist. He was still handsome, still smelled of expensive cologne, still the man who wired a massive sum of money home every month. And he was also the man who, last night, had said to me in a perfectly flat tone, "Let's get a divorce tomorrow." My name is Maya, and I was just as crisp and concise as my reply. Last night, when Chase said those words, I was standing in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. The broth was bubbling, the aroma of roasted garlic filling the air, but my heart was entirely hollow. I didn't ask why, the way most people do. I didn't cry. I just asked one single question. "Are you sure?" Chase nodded. Firmly, rigidly. Like approving a project proposal or signing a corporate contract. No turning back. I set the spoon down, wiped my hands on my apron, and said, "Then, let's go tomorrow." Chase looked at me, seemingly surprised. He probably expected me to cling to him, to scream, to call his mother, to call our relatives. He expected me to cause a massive scene to salvage a marriage that had long been nothing but an empty shell. But I didn't. I had no strength left, and truthfully, I had no desire left either. We had been together for 8 years, married for 5. Outsiders looked at me and said I was lucky to land such a successful man. Chase was a senior executive at a major firm, bringing home around $20,000 a month. I was an administrative assistant, making about $4,000. That massive disparity sat right in the middle of our living room, every single day. It didn't need pointing out, but Chase liked to point it out anyway. Once, adjusting his tie in the mirror, he tossed out a casual comment. "Your monthly salary is what I drop on a single client dinner. Don't you feel like you're falling behind?" I stayed quiet. I was used to being quiet, because if I told him the real reason, he probably wouldn't listen. I needed an administrative job because the 9 to 5 hours were stable, and I needed to be able to run to the hospital. I had to make visiting hours, catch the doctors for updates, handle the billing department, and be there for the nights his mother's condition worsened. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, had suffered a severe stroke 5 years ago. When she fell ill, Chase was young. His career was taking off, and he was so busy he would fall asleep at his desk. He told me, "You handle her care, I'll handle the money," he promised. I believed him. Because I was his wife, because I loved him, because I thought that's how a family worked. Whoever is strong carries the heavy load. Whoever has time gives their time. So I carried it. I carried it day and night, carried it to the point where my own career and ambitions bent under the weight of the word duty. I never complained. I was afraid of exhausting him, afraid of stressing him out, afraid he would snap at me for bothering him with trivial things. And there were times I did call him. Times when the hospital billing portal showed a massive outstanding balance for her out-of-pocket care. I would call Chase, my voice small. "Chase, the copays for these new specialty meds are really high." Chase, usually in the middle of a meeting, would snap, I know. I'll transfer it later. Stop bothering me." I would say okay, and then quietly scramble to find a way to pay the deposit myself, because hospital billing departments don't wait for him to finish his meetings. Today, standing outside the courthouse, Chase delivered a sentence that slammed the door shut forever. "Let's not contact each other anymore." He exhaled heavily after saying it, as if dropping a massive burden. I looked at him. I looked at him for a long time. The man I had once loved, once considered my rock, stood there with a calm face and eyes devoid of a single ounce of nostalgia. I nodded. I said, "Okay, just one word." "That okay?" made Chase freeze. He furrowed his brow slightly, as if he couldn't believe I was making it this easy. Perhaps he was waiting for me to ask, "Are you seeing someone else?" Or, "Where did I go wrong?" But I didn't ask. Not because I didn't know, but because I knew asking wouldn't change a thing. I turned my back and walked down the steps. I didn't look back. I heard his leather shoes shift behind me, heard him let out a sharp breath, and then silence. I walked out to the street, pulling the small suitcase I had packed the night before. I ordered an Uber. The driver pulled up and opened the door. I got in. The door closed. I looked through the rearview mirror and saw Chase still standing on the courthouse steps. He was watching the car leave, not with a look of longing, but with the look of a man who had just lost something and hadn't yet realized what it was. As the car rolled away, the city blurred past the window like a movie on fast forward. I leaned my head against the glass, feeling a tiny bit lighter. Just a little bit, but enough to let me breathe. My phone buzzed. It was Viv, my best friend. Viv texted, "Done?" I replied. "Done." Viv typed back, "Don't look back. I've got everything sorted out for you." Looking at those words, my eyes stung. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Sometimes, when a person hurts too much, the body physically locks itself down just to survive. The car pulled up to O'Hare International Airport. I dragged my suitcase into the terminal. Crowds of people rushed by, everyone busy with their own destinations. For the first time in years, I felt permitted to be busy with my own destination. I wasn't going back to the apartment. I wasn't visiting relatives. I was leaving straight from here. At that very moment, in the parking garage outside the Chicago courthouse, Chase sat in his sleek black car. His hands were gripping the steering wheel, but he hadn't started the engine. He irritably tugged at his collar, as if the very air around him was suffocating. He couldn't understand why he felt so incredibly empty. He had just done what he believed was right, setting them both free. He had just delivered the most decisive line possible: "Let's not contact each other anymore." Yet, a sharp thorn kept twisting in his chest. He glanced over at the passenger seat. Sitting there was a thick, brown manila envelope. He frowned. That wasn't there this morning. Did Maya leave it behind? Chase reached over and picked it up. It was heavier than he expected. He scoffed, muttering to himself, "What kind of game is this now?" He unwound the string and opened the envelope. The first piece of paper to slide out was a hospital billing statement, stamped with the red seal of a premier rehabilitation center. The amount, over $20,000. Payer, Maya. Date, 3 years ago. Chase froze. He flipped to the next page, then the next. Pharmacy bills, specialty bed rentals, intensive care fees, physical therapy invoices. Every single page bore Maya's signature on the payer line. The color drained from Chase's face. He started flipping faster, like a man reading a ledger of debts, a freezing chill creeping up his spine with every page. The numbers piled up, slamming into his forehead like a hammer. He had always thought he transferred enough into the joint account to cover his mother's care. He always thought Maya just went to the billing desk to swipe the card, and that the money was his. But these documents were telling a horrifyingly different story. Chase's hands began to shake. He dug deep into the bottom of the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of stapled papers. The header read, "Personal Loan Agreement. Borrower, Maya. Loan amount, $80,000. Term, 4 years." And attached to the very back was a bank certificate confirming the loan had been paid in full. It felt like someone had punched Chase squarely in the chest. $80,000. He remembered it vividly. 4 years ago, his mother's condition had taken a sudden, drastic turn for the worse. The doctors said she needed emergency surgery and specialized out-of-network care. They needed cash up front. Chase was in the middle of a massive corporate merger, his hair on fire, barely sleeping. Maya had come to him and said very softly, "You focus on your work. I'll handle this part." 2 days later, Maya paid the hospital in full. He had asked, "Where did you get the money?" Maya had smiled and said, "I scraped it together." He believed her. He believed it so easily he didn't even bother to ask follow-up questions. Because in his mind, Maya was just a docile wife, making $4,000 a month, who probably borrowed a few grand from her parents and relatives. He never, in his wildest nightmares, imagined she had taken out a massive personal loan in her own name and spent 4 years silently paying it off. Chase sat paralyzed in his car. Outside, people continued walking by. Horns honked. The sky remained gray. But inside him, an entire foundation collapsed into rubble. He frantically grabbed his phone and dialed my number. "The number you have reached is turned off." He dialed again. Still off. He gripped the steering wheel, cold sweat breaking out on the back of his neck. Only now did he understand why I was so incredibly calm. Because I had been preparing to leave for a very long time. I hadn't just packed my clothes. I had packed up an entire lifetime of unacknowledged sacrifice. Chase dropped his head against the steering wheel, a choked sob tearing from his throat. He whispered in absolute desperation, "Maya, where are you?" And that was the exact moment he began to regret everything, to the point of madness. I passed through the TSA checkpoint at O'Hare, feeling like I was walking through a thick fog. People lined up, pulling luggage, calling out to each other, the terminal announcements echoing overhead. I felt entirely detached from it all, only hearing the clack-clack of my suitcase wheels beneath me and the sound of my own breathing, which I was desperately trying to keep steady. Viv sent one last text. "Turn off your phone. Do not let him call you. Don't turn it back on until you land." I stared at the text. My finger hovered over the power button, but I hesitated. It wasn't because I still longed for Chase. It was because I still carried the ghost of an old habit, the fear of making someone else uncomfortable, the fear of being accused of being too harsh. That habit had clung to me since the day I married into his family. I knew it was toxic, but fixing it was like trying to repair a crack in a foundation. It takes time, sheer willpower, and one final, definitive breaking point. I powered off the phone. The black screen reflected my pale, but remarkably calm face. I stood at the boarding gate, looking through the massive windows at the silver fuselage of the plane against the gray Chicago sky. I whispered to myself, "Maya, starting today, you don't need anyone's permission to live." It wasn't until I sat down in my seat and buckled my seatbelt that I realized my hands were freezing, not from the cabin AC, but from the realization of how long I had been clenching my jaw and enduring. Letting go made me realize just how hard I had been bracing myself. The plane taxied, the roar of the engines growing deafening. I turned my face to the window, watching the runway speed backward until the city shrank into a tiny map. When the wheels left the ground, my stomach dropped, and my heart gave a sharp, sudden twinge, as if an invisible tether had finally been snipped. I didn't cry. I just felt empty. So empty that even sadness hadn't had time to rush in and fill the void. I was flying to Los Angeles. Viv was right. If I wanted to disappear from Chase's life, I had to go far away from the familiar streets, the restaurants we used to frequent, and the hospital corridors I used to sprint through. I had already rented a small room in a quiet neighborhood near Viv's apartment. Viv had told me, "Just stay here for a while and figure things out. Don't rush into any big decisions. The first thing you need to do is get one solid, decent night of sleep." Sleep. It sounds so simple, but for me, a full night's sleep had been a luxury for years. During the years my mother-in-law was hospitalized, my sleep was entirely fragmented. I slept sitting up in hard plastic hospital chairs. I dozed off leaning against hallway railings. I slept to the rhythmic beep-beep of heart monitors. There were nights I lay in my own bed at home, eyes wide open in the dark, terrified the hospital would call with bad news. Chase, on the other hand, would come home late, exhausted, and pass out immediately. He fell asleep fast, like a man who had never had to stand guard over someone else's breathing. The plane touched down at LAX. I turned my phone back on as I walked toward baggage claim. Within seconds, the phone buzzed violently. The screen lit up with a barrage of missed calls from Chase. 10 calls, 20. Then the text messages flooded in, fragmented and frantic, reading like the words of a panicked man. "Maya, where are you? Pick up the phone. I need to talk to you. Don't blow this out of proportion. If you want money, Just tell me. Reading that last one, I let out a laugh, though it was entirely soundless. He still thought the same way. He thought everything could be quantified into a dollar amount. He didn't understand that what I wanted wasn't money. It was basic human decency. It was a thank you. It was him standing up in front of his family and saying, "That is my wife. Do not disrespect her. You can't wire transfer those things." I didn't reply. I dialed Viv's number. My voice was hoarse. "He's calling," I said. Viv answered instantly, fully prepared. "Ignore it. Do not soften up. You cave once, and you're back in that cycle for the rest of your life. Remember all those times you were exhausted, and you told me, 'He's probably just busy,' and then you went and did everything yourself anyway? Do not comfort yourself with his excuses this time." "I know," I said quietly. I hung up, dragged my suitcase to the rideshare pickup, and looked out at the Los Angeles afternoon. It was warm, the palm trees swaying in the ocean breeze. It was so completely different from the bleak cold of Chicago. I felt like I had just shed a heavy winter coat. I hoped that this new sky meant a new dawn. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Chase was still sitting in his car, clutching the manila envelope like it was a boulder. He couldn't reach me, so he tried calling Viv. Viv ignored his calls. He called again, then texted, then cursed, and finally fell completely silent. There is a kind of regret that doesn't immediately burst into tears. Instead, it ignites a suffocating restlessness, a lump in the throat that you can't swallow down and can't spit out. He drove back to the condo that used to be ours. Now, it was undoubtedly echoing with empty spaces. I could perfectly picture him opening the front door, seeing that my slippers were gone, noticing that the kitchen towel I always hung on the oven handle was missing, realizing the master bedroom was slowly losing the faint scent of my fabric softener. These tiny, insignificant things that he had always taken for granted, now that they were gone, they left gaping craters behind. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but I knew Chase would search the house. He would turn on all the lights, open the closets, rummage through the drawers. He would discover things I kept hidden not to deceive him, but to keep the peace in his household. Like the small notebook where I meticulously tracked his mother's follow-up appointments, medication schedules, doctors' names, and room numbers. Like the medical documents I carefully organized in plastic sleeves so they wouldn't get wet or lost. I had done it all like a devoted, invisible estate manager, only to be branded a woman with no ambition. That night, I arrived at my rented room. It was small, but pristine. Viv made me a mug of hot chamomile tea and pressed it into my hands like an anchor to keep me from drifting away. She looked at me for a long time, before her voice softened. "Maya, do you remember Eleanor?" I froze. The name of my mother-in-law made my heart ache. I didn't hate her. In fact, there were times I loved her more than I loved myself. She was bedridden, her speech impaired, her limbs weak, but her eyes would always follow me for a long time, as if trying to communicate. Once, she had grabbed my hand with trembling fingers and struggled to articulate, "You suffer." I remembered her most lucid day. It was a gray, overcast day, much like today. She pulled me close and wheezed, "Maya, I know. You carry everything." I leaned down and faked a smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry about it." She looked at me, tears spilling from the corners of her eyes, and blinked slowly, as if apologizing. I wiped her tears, my heart feeling simultaneously warm and incredibly bitter. She loved me, but she was powerless, because her son Chase was so busy, so successful, and so deeply convinced that bringing home a paycheck meant his job was entirely done. Viv continued, her voice low. "If Eleanor were still healthy, I don't think she would want you to be dragged back there to keep suffering. Do you understand? You didn't leave because you're selfish. You left to save your own life." I sat in silence, looking out the window at the distant LA city lights. I suddenly realized that for all these years, I had lived as nothing but a shadow in Chase's house. I was a wife, a daughter-in-law, a nurse, an accountant, but I had completely forgotten how to be Maya. I asked Viv, my voice barely a whisper, "Can I really start over?" Viv didn't offer empty platitudes. She just delivered one rock-solid sentence. "Yes, but it has to start with you no longer being afraid." That night, I lay on a small twin bed, under a thin blanket that smelled of fresh laundry detergent. I closed my eyes, assuming I would toss and turn like every other night. Surprisingly, I drifted off to sleep before I even knew it. In my dream, I saw a long, cavernous hospital corridor bathed in cold, fluorescent white light. At the very end of the hall sat Eleanor. She looked incredibly peaceful. She didn't speak. She just gave me a single, gentle nod. A nod as if she were seeing me off, no blame, no holding me back. I woke up the next morning to a single new text message from Chase. It was longer than any text he had ever sent me. Maya. Please, I am begging you to listen to me just this once. I finally realize how wrong I was. I didn't know what you did for us. I don't deserve you, but I want to make it up to you. Can you please give me a chance? I read it, then set the phone down. I wasn't shaking anymore. I just felt a strange, light sensation, mixed with a faint ache. Because he finally knew the pain he caused, but he knew it far too late. I got up, washed my face, and tied my hair back into a neat ponytail. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, Maya, from now on, you live for you. I didn't reply to Chase's text. Not because I wanted to torture him, but because I truly wasn't ready to say anything. There are times when a person needs silence to avoid shattering a newly forged resolve. I was terrified that if I let my heart soften, I would be dragged right back into that familiar loop, listening to him explain, convincing myself to just give him one more chance, and returning to live in a house where I was nothing but an unpaid servant. Viv left for work early. Before she left, she placed a warm bowl of oatmeal on the table and said, Eat up, so you have some energy. I took the afternoon off. We're going to drop off your resume. What resume? I asked. Did you forget? I told you, my friend's company is hiring an HR admin assistant. The pay isn't astronomical, but the hours are strictly 9 to 5, and the environment is highly professional. You need to get your feet under you first. I nodded. I had no grand, unrealistic dreams anymore. I just needed a place to stand. A new rhythm of life that had absolutely nothing to do with hospitals, medical bills, or the scrutinizing glares of my in-laws. While eating, I checked my phone. 3 more missed calls from Chase. No new texts. I knew he was waiting. A man like him, when he realizes he's made a massive error, will throw himself into fixing it with aggressive, loud determination. But I also knew that kind of determination usually only lasts until he feels he has done enough to clear his conscience. I locked my screen. At noon, Viv and I went to her friend's company. It was housed in a clean, modern building, tucked away on a quiet street in Santa Monica. I submitted my resume and answered a few straightforward questions. The interviewer was a woman in her mid-40s with a very gentle demeanor. She asked, "Are you available for frequent overtime?" I shook my head. "No, ma'am. I am only looking for standard business hours." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "The work here isn't overly stressful. We just need someone stable, who isn't going to jump ship in 6 months. If you're looking for longevity, you're at the top of the list." The word longevity brought me an immense sense of peace. For the first time in years, I thought about the future without feeling a suffocating lump in my throat. That afternoon, when I returned to my room, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Chase. It was my mother-in-law, Eleanor. My heart skipped a beat. She was calling me when Chase and I had literally just finalized our divorce, and I had vanished. I held the phone, my hands trembling slightly, but I pressed accept. "Maya? Honey?" Her voice was frail and raspy, but perfectly clear. "Yes, Mom, I'm here." "Where are you?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. I swallowed hard. "I'm in Los Angeles, Mom, visiting a friend for a few days." The line went silent for several seconds. Then, she let out a long sigh. "I know. Chase told me." I held my breath. I didn't know what she was going to say next. Would she yell at me for leaving? Blame me for abandoning the family? Beg me to come back? "Maya," she spoke slowly, "I don't blame you." Those words made my throat seize up. "I just wanted to call and ask if you were okay." I bit my lip, tears springing to my eyes, but I forced my voice to remain steady. I'm okay, Mom. You're lying, she said very softly. I can hear it in your voice. You're exhausted, aren't you? I couldn't hold it in anymore. I broke down sobbing, crying like a child backed into a corner. All the repressed emotions of the past 5 years shattered with that one sentence. I am so sorry, Maya, she said, her voice shaking. I am so sorry for making you suffer. I know everything. I know how you took care of me. I know you sold your father's old house in Michigan to save me. I know you took out loans to pay my medical debts. I knew it all, and I was completely powerless. I clutched the phone, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Mom, I don't blame you, but I blame myself, she wept. I am a mother-in-law who watched her daughter-in-law suffer in silence. I am a mother who raised a foolish, blind son who didn't know how to keep his wife. I heard her breathing heavily, coughing softly. Maya, listen to me very carefully. Do not come back for me. Do not come back for Chase. You only come back if you truly, deeply want to. Otherwise, you keep walking forward. I hold absolutely no resentment toward you. I wiped my tears, my voice trembling. Mom, please take care of your health. Don't stress too much. I will call you. Go in peace, sweetie. I love you. The call ended. I collapsed onto the bed. My mother-in-law, the woman I had spent 5 years nursing, was the only person in that house who truly understood me, and the only one who refused to hold me back. My heart ached for her, but it also ached for me. There are good women in this world who find themselves trapped in families with men who simply aren't good enough. That evening, Chase called again. I stared at his name on the screen for a long time. Finally, I answered. Maya. His voice was gravelly. You finally picked up. Yeah, I replied curtly. Where are you? I'm flying to LA right now to find you. I gave a dry laugh. Why are you looking for me? I want to talk. Face to face. There is no need. Maya, please, give me one chance to explain. Explain to who? I asked, my voice much calmer than I anticipated. To me? Or to yourself? To prove you aren't so terrible that you're beyond saving. Chase fell silent. I could clearly hear his heavy, ragged breathing over the line. Maya, he said, I just found out about the loan. About your dad's house. I was an absolute idiot. I didn't know. I thought you were just working a cushy job for fun. I had no idea you were carrying all of that. I closed my eyes. You didn't know, because you never wanted to know. I told you so many times. I told you I needed your support. You only heard what was convenient for you. I was wrong. I admit it. Come back. I will make it up to you. Make up for what? I asked. Make up the money? Make up the time? Make up for the self-respect you slowly ground into dust piece by piece? Chase choked up. I will change. I swear to God. You've promised me that before, I said evenly. You promised to help care for your mom, but you left it entirely to me. You promised to spend time with us, but you gave it all to your job. You promised to respect me, but you let your sister treat me like dirt. What exactly are you promising this time? 2E. I'll step down from the executive board. I'll take care of my mom myself. I won't let anyone say a bad word about you. It's too late, Chase. Maya. Do you still love me? He asked, his voice shrinking until it sounded like begging. I was quiet for a very long time. Then, I told the absolute truth. I used to love you more than anything, but now, I'm not sure. I might still care about you, but I do not trust you anymore. That sentence was the final nail in the coffin. Chase couldn't say another word. Chase, I continued, do not come looking for me. Do not force me to make a choice when I am finally, for the first time in years, just beginning to breathe again. If I ever truly want to see you, I will reach out. He let out a choked sob. So, you're really leaving me? I smiled sadly. No, I'm leaving the version of myself that existed when I was with you. I hung up. I sat still for a long time, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't feel relief instantly, but I felt like I had finally done something I had never dared to do before. I had established an unbreakable boundary. That night, I texted Eleanor, Mom, I am okay. Please take care of yourself. I love you. She replied almost instantly. I love you too. Live for yourself now. I put my phone down, and tears fell. But this time, it wasn't out of pain. It was because, for the first time, I realized I wasn't entirely alone. I started my new job exactly a week after arriving in Los Angeles. I spent that first week doing exactly 3 things: catching up on years of sleep, walking the quiet suburban streets near my apartment, and unlearning the instinct to flinch. Every time my phone buzzed, Chase didn't call. He had sent exactly one final text after our phone call. I respect your decision, but I will wait. I read it, then deleted it. Not out of hatred, but because I refused to keep anything that could act as a breadcrumb leading me back to my old cycle. On my first day of work, I wore a simple white blouse, black slacks, and tied my hair back into a neat ponytail. Looking in the mirror, I saw a stranger. Thinner, with lingering dark circles, but my eyes no longer held that bone-deep exhaustion. I no longer had to race the clock to make hospital visiting hours. I no longer had to wait for updates from the nurse's station. I no longer had to anxiously check if the joint account had enough funds to cover the day's copays. The job wasn't grueling. It was mostly paperwork, managing timesheets, drafting employment contracts, and coordinating catered lunches for the staff. It was work my hands had memorized long ago, but there was one massive difference here. When I finished a task, people looked at me and said, "Thank you." It was a simple phrase, yet in 5 years at Chase's house, I had almost never heard it. At noon, I ate lunch in the break room with a few other women from my department. They asked where I was from, how long I'd been in LA, if I had a family. I answered simply, I just moved here from Chicago. I'm divorced. They paused for a microsecond before an older woman smiled warmly. Divorce isn't the end of the world, honey. It just means you upgraded your life. I nodded, suddenly feeling incredibly light. Here, no one looked at me with pity or scrutinizing judgment. I was just the new HR girl named Maya. Just a normal person living a normal day. That afternoon, I received a text from my mother-in-law. She sent a photo of a bowl of chicken noodle soup with the caption, I made this myself. Does it look like the soup you used to make for me? Looking at the photo, my nose stung. She was trying to prove to me that she was okay, that she didn't need me to come running back to take care of her. I texted back, it looks exactly like it, Mom. Make sure you eat it while it's hot. And remember your 4 p.m. meds. She replied with a single red heart emoji. I smiled, then sighed. Some bonds aren't tied by blood, yet they run deeper than family. That evening, Viv dragged me out to a seafood spot down the street. She declared it a celebration of my first day on the job. I ate with an appetite I hadn't felt in years, probably because it was the first time I was eating a meal without staring at my phone, terrified it would ring with an emergency. Is Chase still bothering you? Viv asked over a plate of shrimp. No, I shook my head. I think he's trying to play the noble martyr. Viv snorted. Noble or not, let's see if he lasts a few months, but remember what I told you. Do not look back. I know. I didn't want to look back, but I also wasn't delusional enough to believe I was completely healed. There were still nights I dreamt of the condo in Chicago. I dreamt I was standing at the stove, and I could hear Chase calling out, Maya, where are you? I would wake up, my heart racing, only to remind myself it was just a phantom reflex from an 8-year habit. Back in Chicago, Chase was living a life he didn't recognize. He still went to work, still ran meetings, still signed contracts, but he came home earlier now. The dead silence of the condo was driving him insane. He opened the refrigerator and found it completely barren. In the past, Maya always left pre-prepped meals in Tupperware with sticky notes. If you're home late, heat this up. Now, there was nothing. He called his mother. Eleanor answered, sounding exhausted. Stop calling me every hour. I'm fine. Mom, have you talked to Maya? Chase asked. She was silent for a few seconds. Yes. What did she say? She said she loves me, Eleanor replied flatly. Chase choked on his breath. Did you try to convince her to come back? Eleanor let out a heavy sigh. What right do I have to convince her? Bring her back so she can suffer more? What have you ever actually done for her besides hand her money? Chase couldn't argue. He asked quietly, Mom, do you blame me? She gave a sad, bitter laugh. I blame myself more. I raised a son, but I failed to teach him how to hold on to the person standing right beside him. After that call, Chase sat in the living room for hours, staring at the armchair where Maya used to sit folding laundry. He suddenly remembered a tiny, insignificant detail. Once, he had come home completely blackout drunk after a corporate event and vomited all over the hardwood floor. Maya had knelt down and scrubbed it up, without saying a single word. The next morning, he woke up to a spotless house. All he had said to her was, "Don't let me drink that much next time." Maya had just said, "Okay." He had treated her care as so inherently guaranteed that he mistook it for an obligation. One evening, Chase drove to the rehabilitation hospital where his mother had spent years recovering. He stood in the hallway, looking at the hard plastic waiting chairs. He visualized Maya's thin back, the worn-out cardigan she always wore. He realized that these sterile halls held more memories of his wife than of his own mother. He typed out a massive, sprawling text message to me. Then he deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Ultimately, he didn't send a thing. In Los Angeles, I was settling into my new reality. The HR director praised my efficiency. I received my first paycheck. It wasn't a fortune, but it was my money. Not money transferred from a husband to fund a household. I opened a private savings account and deposited a small chunk of it. For the first time in my adult life, I was saving money for my own future. I called my dad back in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He had been living alone since my mom passed away years ago. I hadn't been back to visit him in over 2 years. I was always too busy with the hospital, too busy with my in-laws, too busy with a life that didn't have room for him. "Dad?" I said. "Maya." His voice instantly brightened. "Dad, I got a divorce." He went completely silent. Then, he asked very softly, "Were you suffering very much?" I bit my lip. "I'm okay now, Dad. I moved to California. I got a job. You aren't coming back here. I'll come visit soon. Please don't worry about me. I can take care of myself now." My dad let out a long sigh. "When I walked you down the aisle, I didn't want you moving to Chicago. I was terrified you would be mistreated. You never complained, but I knew. But it's good that you got out. We don't have much money, and I can't give you anything except a place to land. Remember, if anything ever happens, you can always come home." I cried, but this time, I cried out of sheer relief. That evening, I received a text from Chase. "Maya, my mom talked to me. I don't expect you to come back right now. I just beg you not to cut me out completely. I want to make amends, even if I don't know if I'll ever get another chance." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply. I knew he was hurting, and I knew he was genuinely remorseful. But I also knew that if I tossed him even a thread of hope, he would grab it and use it to drag me right back into the cycle. I wasn't strong enough yet to stand in the middle without being pulled down. A week later, my mother-in-law called me. Her voice was much weaker. "Maya, I'm back in the hospital. It's not critical, just a checkup." My heart clenched. "Which hospital?" "The usual one." I was silent for a few seconds. "Mom, do you need me to fly out?" She gave a very faint chuckle. "I wouldn't dare bother you. I just wanted to let you know so you wouldn't worry. Chase has been here since last night." I closed my eyes. Part of me screamed to book a flight immediately. Another part anchored my feet to the floor. "Mom, please take care of yourself. I will call you every single day. Don't worry about me," she said. "You take care of yourself first." I put the phone down, my hands trembling. I knew my first real test had arrived. Was I going to regress into the familiar role of the dutiful daughter-in-law? Or was I going to maintain the identity of Maya that I had just fought to reclaim? I texted Chase. "You stay there and take care of your mother. I am not flying out. She needs you more than she needs me." He replied instantly. "I understand." I exhaled a massive breath. I had made my choice. That night, I barely slept. The image of Eleanor lying in a hospital bed haunted my mind like a bad habit I hadn't kicked yet. The reflex to rush to LAX, jump on a red-eye to Chicago, and stand by her bedside was so overpowering that I literally had to sit up, wrap my arms around my knees, and remind myself, "Maya, You do not play that role anymore. I opened my phone and looked at Chase's text. I understand. 2 short words, no guilt tripping, no begging. For the first time in our entire marital history, he said exactly what I needed to hear, but he said it too late. The next morning, I called Eleanor. Mom, did you sleep okay? I did, honey. Her voice was weak, but lucid. I'm eating some oatmeal now. What did the doctors say? Nothing major. They said I'm just weak and need observation. Chase has been sitting here since last night. I stayed quiet for a moment. Mom, do you really not need me to come? She said, I don't need you here. I just need you to live in peace. I held you captive for 5 years. I refuse to hold you captive any longer. That felt like a gentle squeeze on my heart. Mom, don't say that. I stayed because I wanted to. I know, but I don't want you wanting to anymore, she said slowly. Keep walking. Don't look back for me. I swallowed hard. Please take your meds. I'll call you tomorrow. Make sure you eat properly. Stop sacrificing yourself like you used to. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. When the call ended, I sat staring at the blank white wall of my apartment. There are people who, even after the legal paperwork is severed, remain lodged in your heart in a way you can never fully extract. In Chicago, Chase actually stayed at the hospital with his mother. For the first time in his life, he slept on a hard plastic chair. For the first time, he was jolted awake by the shrill alarm of an IV pump. For the first time, he had to navigate the billing department to pay a deposit without a text message reminding him to do it. He was so clumsy that the nurses had to walk him through every step. When he signed his name on the hospital invoice, he suddenly recalled my familiar signature on all those old documents. His hand trembled. At noon, he called me. Maya. I'm at the hospital. The doctor said she's stabilizing. That's good. Are you really not flying out? No, I replied. He went quiet. I thought you would. You thought I would what? I asked. You thought I wouldn't be able to drop the daughter-in-law act? I gave a sad laugh. I dropped it. I'm learning how to let it go. He exhaled heavily. I'm just realizing that all the things you handled before, I can barely manage them. You don't need to compare, I said. You just need to handle your part. Maya, I miss you. I closed my eyes. You miss me because you're exhausted and feeling empty. You don't miss me because you understand me. He couldn't say another word. I hung up. Not out of anger, but because I didn't want to prolong a conversation that would only leave us both more tangled. In the days that followed, I settled into a steady rhythm. Work in the morning, lunch with coworkers, back to the apartment in the evening. I'd call my dad, call Eleanor, and then read a book or watch mindless TV to let my brain rest. I no longer stayed up past midnight. I no longer jumped out of my skin every time an unknown number called. One afternoon, the HR director called me into her office. Maya, I've been really impressed with your work. Starting at the end of the month, I'm bumping your salary up by $500 a month. It's not massive, but consider it an encouragement. I bowed my head. Thank you so much. An extra $500 a month wasn't life-changing wealth, but to me, it was the very first concrete proof that I was walking in the right direction. That night, I received a text from Chase. Maya, my mom asked about you. She wants to talk to you. I called her back immediately. Maya, honey? Her voice was even weaker than the day before. I'm here, Mom. I know I'm bothering you, but I just wanted to say one thing. Go ahead, Mom. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of me for 5 years. I have absolutely nothing to give you in return. I just pray that someday you find someone who knows how to love you better than Chase did. Tears streamed down my face. Mom, please don't talk like that. I love you. I love you too, she said. But I'm not holding on to you anymore. That phone call closed an entire chapter in my soul. I felt like I had finally been granted a dignified, honorable discharge. A week later, Chase flew to Los Angeles. He texted me beforehand. I am not coming to your apartment or your job. I just want to meet you once to talk like adults. If you don't want to, I will fly back immediately. I stared at the text for a long time. Finally, I replied, meet me at the coffee shop down the street from my office. Half an hour later, he replied, thank you. I arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early. I sat in a corner booth, nursing an iced peach tea. When Chase walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost weight. Dark circles framed his eyes, and his designer dress shirt was noticeably wrinkled. He looked at me with an incredibly strange expression, like looking at someone who had truly, finally vanished from his life. "Maya," he said softly. "Sit down," I offered. We sat across from each other in a long, heavy silence. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raspy. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that I finally understand." "Understand what?" I asked. "I understand that I built my life on top of your sacrifices, and I treated it as your obligation. I understand that I left you entirely alone to carry the weight of everything." I nodded. "It's good for you that you understand that now. But it's too late for us." "I didn't come here to ask for you back," he said quickly. "I came to pay my debts." I frowned. "What debts?" "The loan you took out, the money from selling your dad's house, the out-of-pocket medical bills. I audited everything. I am going to pay you back every single cent." I shook my head. "I don't need it." "You do need it," he insisted. "That is your money. I cannot live with myself if I don't pay it back." "Chase, I didn't do those things to open a tab," I said. "But I have no right to benefit from them for free." I looked at him for a long time. "Do you think paying me back is going to balance the scales?" He looked down at his hands. "No, but it is literally the only thing I have left that I can do." I exhaled. "Transfer the money. I'll accept it. But do not trick yourself into thinking that accepting the money means I'm coming back to you." "I know." We fell back into silence. "Maya," he asked quietly, "are you happier now?" I thought about it genuinely. I don't know if happy is the right word yet, but I feel like I am finally living. He nodded, his eyes red. "That's all that matters." We stood up. He didn't try to grab my hand or hug me. He just said, "I won't bother you anymore, but if you ever need me, I'm still here." I nodded. "Thank you. But I hope I'll never need to." He gave a sad, shattered smile. We turned our backs and walked in completely opposite directions. That evening, Chase wired a massive sum of money into my account. I stared at the notification, my hands shaking slightly. It was the exact total of the loan I had taken out, the money from my dad's house, plus a little extra for interest. I didn't feel overjoyed. I just felt that an old, agonizing chapter had officially closed. The money sat untouched in my account for 3 days. I wasn't afraid to spend it. I just needed time to process the reality of it. The years of my youth and sacrifice had finally been given their proper name. They were no longer dismissed as the duty of a daughter-in-law. On the 4th day, I went to the bank, paid off a tiny remaining balance on a credit card, and moved the rest into a high-yield savings account in my name alone. I told myself, "Maya, this isn't a man buying off his guilt. This is the monetary equivalent of your youth, your blood, sweat, and tears. You have every right to keep it without an ounce of guilt." That afternoon, I called my dad in Michigan. "Dad, I'm wiring you some money. Please call a contractor and get the roof on the house fixed. The rainy season is coming." My dad was silent for a moment. "Where did you get that kind of money?" "I got a good job. I saved it up." He sighed heavily. "You need to take care of yourself first. I'm old, a leaky roof is fine. Stop saving money like that, Dad. I can take care of myself now. Let me take care of you for once." His voice dropped. "You've grown up so much." I smiled. "I had to grow up, Dad. No one else was going to carry it for me." After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. I realized that since walking away from Chase, I had finally returned to being my father's daughter, rather than just someone else's daughter-in-law.
Chicago.
Back in Chicago, Eleanor was discharged from the hospital. She called me that very night. "Maya, I'm back home." "That's great, Mom. How are you feeling?" "Tolerable. The doctors ordered me to rest, said I can't push myself anymore." Hearing that made me laugh softly. This woman had pushed herself her entire life, and only now was she finally giving herself permission to stop. "How is Chase taking care of you?" I asked. She chuckled faintly. "He's hopelessly clumsy. He burns the oatmeal, forgets to stir my protein shakes. But he sits next to me all day. He's different now. I didn't say anything. I had no desire to comment on Chase's character arc. That was his journey, not mine. Maya, she continued, I don't know the right way to say this, but I want you to know I consider you my own daughter. Whether you ever come back or not, I will always be your mother. Tears streamed down my face. And I consider you my mother too. Live a good life, honey. Do not let anyone ever make you suffer again. The call ended. I felt an incredible sense of peace. Some relationships don't need a legal marriage certificate to survive. My career was taking off. I was given more responsibilities handling onboarding and preliminary interviews. My director said, Maya, you have a great read on people. I trust your judgment on these hires. I smiled. I figured 5 years of surviving intense psychological pressure in my in-laws' house had probably honed my intuition. One afternoon, a middle-aged man came into the office to apply for a building security position. He had a distinct Midwestern accent. I asked, Where are you from, sir? His eyes lit up. I'm from Michigan. Grand Rapids, actually. No way. That's my hometown. We chatted for a few minutes. He told me his wife had passed away years ago. His son was deployed overseas in the military, and he had moved to California looking for a fresh start. Hearing his story felt strangely familiar. Drifting, bruised souls like his and mine weren't actually that rare. That night, I told Viv about it. She smirked. You have a soft spot for people who have suffered like you. I glared at her. You make it sound so cynical. It's cynical, but true. But things are different now. You aren't suffering because someone else is forcing you to. You're making your own choices. I nodded. Viv was right. One weekend evening, I received a text from Chase. Maya, I'm just letting you know. I resigned from the firm. I read it, confused as to why he was updating me on his career. I replied, That's your decision. He texted back. I took a job at a much smaller company. The pay is half of what I made. But there are no late-night meetings, no endless client dinners. I wanted time to actually take care of my mom. I stared at the screen. My heart didn't ache, nor did it flutter. That's good. It took him a long time to type the next message. I didn't do it to win you back. I did it because I realized how entirely wrong I had lived my life. I didn't reply. I didn't need to know how much he had changed. I only needed to hold on to my own life. A month later, my dad flew to Los Angeles to visit me. I went to LAX to pick him up. He looked thinner than I remembered, his hair much grayer. He stood in the middle of the chaotic terminal, clutching a worn-out duffel bag, looking slightly lost. Dad, I called out. He turned, his eyes lighting up. Maya! I ran over and hugged him. It felt like hugging an old, weathered, but incredibly sturdy pillar. I took him back to my apartment and cooked a simple, comforting dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. He ate with immense appetite, watching me the whole time. Are you doing okay? He asked. I'm doing great, Dad. I have a job. I have money. Is anyone giving you a hard time? I shook my head. No. He nodded in satisfaction. That's all that matters. That night, he slept in my small bed while I set up a sleeping pad on the floor. Staring at the ceiling, he asked quietly, You really aren't going back to him? No, Dad. Are you sad? I thought about it. Yes. Sometimes. But not nearly as sad as I was when I lived with him. He sighed deeply. Then you made the right choice. The next morning, my dad tagged along with me to my office building. He sat at the coffee shop across the street, just watching the entrance, waiting for me to get off work. Seeing him sitting there, I realized I was no longer alone in the world. That evening, I took him for a walk around the neighborhood. He said, I feel much better seeing you live like this, rather than knowing you're crying alone in some massive, expensive house in Chicago. I laughed. You sound exactly like my mother-in-law. He looked at me. She's a good woman. Yeah, she is. I knew my life was entering a new chapter, not a loud, glamorous one, but a chapter where I was finally standing firmly on my own 2 feet. My dad stayed in Los Angeles for exactly a week. A short week, but to me, It felt like a vital pause, a deep breath of air, giving me the strength to keep moving. In the mornings, he woke up early, walked to the local farmer's market, and bought fresh vegetables to cook dinner for me. I would come home from work to find him sitting at the small dining table, holding his worn, leather-bound Bible, silently mouthing prayers. "What are you doing, Dad?" I asked. He smiled gently. "Praying for your peace." My nose stung. One evening, he sat on the edge of the bed, watching me fold laundry. He spoke very softly. "Do you blame me, Maya?" I paused. "Blame you for what, Dad?" "For being poor when you were younger. For not giving you a stronger foundation to fall back on. For letting you marry into a situation where you had to suffer so much." I sat down next to him and took his rough, calloused hands in mine. "Dad, I don't blame you at all. If I hadn't gone through those years, I wouldn't be the woman I am today." He sighed. "You're just saying that to make me feel less guilty." I shook my head. "I'm telling you the absolute truth." The day my dad flew back to Michigan, I took him to the airport. Before walking through security, he turned back and said, "If anything ever happens, you call me. Stop trying to carry the world by yourself." I nodded. As he disappeared into the crowd, I stood there for a long time. I knew that from now on, I had zero reasons to ever look back at my dead marriage. I had a different family now, smaller, but infinitely more real. Work swept me away the second I stepped back into the office. The new branch was expanding rapidly. HR policies were a mess, and internal conflicts were starting to flare up. I walked into my first mediation meeting as the lead HR manager. My heart was beating a little fast, but my voice remained dead calm. I looked at the room of employees and said, "I cannot promise that you will be happy with every decision I make, but I promise that every decision will be transparent and completely fair." The room was silent for a few seconds before an older manager nodded in agreement. I knew I had laid the first solid brick in my new foundation. For the next few weeks, I practically lived at the office. I would come home so exhausted I just wanted to collapse flat onto my mattress. Viv called me and scolded. "Are you turning yourself into a corporate machine to avoid dealing with your feelings?" I gave a weak laugh. "No, I'm building something that actually belongs to me." She was silent for a moment before saying, "Okay. Then, keep pushing, but make sure you're eating properly." There was another presence in my life during this time, Tom. Tom was the older gentleman, the family friend my dad had introduced me to over the phone. He was a distinguished man in his early 50s who had lived in Los Angeles for over a decade. He would text me occasionally, "Did you eat dinner tonight?" Sometimes I answered honestly, sometimes I lied. He never scolded me. He just gently reminded me, "Don't wait until you burn out to realize you need to take care of yourself." I felt a warm sense of comfort from his attention. It was a care that demanded absolutely nothing in return. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Chase requested a personal day and flew to Grand Rapids, Michigan, to visit my dad. He didn't tell me. He stood outside my dad's modest house, hesitating for a long time before finally knocking. My dad opened the door and froze. "Chase." Chase bowed his head respectfully. "Hi, Arthur. I came to visit you." My dad invited him in and poured him a cup of coffee. The two men sat across from each other in silence. "Maya doesn't know I'm here," Chase finally admitted. "I figured," my dad replied with a heavy sigh. "She's suffered enough because of you. I'm glad you still think of her, but I won't be glad if you're here to try and drag her back." Chase kept his head down. "I wouldn't dare think that anymore. I just wanted to ask, do you hate me?" My dad looked at him, his eyes kind but profoundly sad. "I am angry, yes, but I don't hold on to hatred. I just feel pity for both of you." Chase's eyes went red. "I'm so sorry, Arthur. I know you regret it," my dad nodded. "But life isn't a movie. Not every regret can be fixed with an apology." Chase spent the afternoon helping my dad clean out the gutters and do yard work. Before leaving, he placed a thick envelope of cash on the kitchen table. My dad slid it right back to him. "I won't accept this. Please, just consider it a contribution for your medical checkups," Chase pleaded. My dad shook his head firmly. "If you still have any love left for Maya, do not use money to try and buy absolution. She doesn't need it." Chase stood in silence for a very long time, then said his goodbyes and left. That night, my dad called me. Maya, Chase came to visit me today. I went dead silent. I was straight with him. Don't worry. What did you do, Dad? I told him I didn't want you getting pulled backward. You're walking forward now. Don't turn your head for my sake. Hearing that, tears streamed down my face. I'm not going back, Dad. I'm just sad. It's okay to be sad, he said. But sadness passes. Back in Los Angeles, an unexpected crisis blew up at work. An employee filed a formal complaint against a department head, alleging severe favoritism in shift scheduling. I had to step in and handle the investigation. I brought both parties into my office and listened to their sides. The department head was a close, personal friend of the regional director. I knew that if I came down too hard, I'd be stepping on powerful toes, but I looked them in the eye and said, "In this office, there is no such thing as friends. If someone violated policy, they will be held accountable." Ultimately, the department head was forced to issue a formal apology and restructure the schedule. After that meeting, the employees looked at me differently. I was no longer the quiet, polite, new girl. That night, I came home utterly drained. I brewed a cup of the herbal tea Tom had dropped off in a care package earlier that week. I thought about my dad, about Chase, about the years I had spent swallowing my pride. I realized my heart was simultaneously hardening and softening. Hardening because I could no longer be easily swayed or manipulated. Softening because I no longer harbored a burning, consuming hatred. Tom called me. "How's your dad doing?" "He's doing much better. Thank you for asking." "That's good to hear. Are you planning to visit Michigan soon?" "Maybe for a few days." Tom went quiet for a moment. "As your dad gets older, do you plan on moving him out to LA to live with you?" I paused. "I haven't thought that far ahead. I'm not sure yet." "I was just asking," Tom said gently. "I see you living all alone, working so hard." I smiled. "I'm used to it, Tom. Being used to it doesn't mean you don't need someone beside you." I didn't answer. I didn't want to open a door to a conversation I wasn't ready to have. One afternoon, I got off work early and stopped by Viv's apartment. She was making dinner and told me to stay. While we ate, she casually dropped a bomb. "Chase went to Michigan to see your dad, didn't he?" I flinched. "How did you know?" Viv sighed. "Your cousin Haley told me. Don't be mad. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to mess with your head." I stayed quiet. Viv put her fork down. "How do you feel about it?" I shook my head. "I don't want to go back to him, but I also don't want to hate him anymore." Viv nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what you need. Hating someone means you're still tethered to them. Not hating them means you finally let go." That evening, I received a text from Chase. "Maya, I went to Michigan to see your dad. He looks much healthier." I replied, "Thank you for visiting him. I know you didn't have any ulterior motives. I just wanted to check on him, that's all." We stopped there. I realized my heart was much calmer than I ever thought possible. That weekend, Tom invited me to visit a beautiful botanical garden overlooking the ocean. I hesitated, then agreed. I stood at the scenic overlook, looking out at the vast Pacific. I didn't pray for anything massive or miraculous. I just hoped for my dad's continued health and for the clarity to never wander back into the darkness of my past life. On the drive back, Tom said softly, "Maya, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I want to be honest with you. I really admire the way you live your life now." I smiled politely. "Please don't say that, Tom. You're flattering me." "I'm serious," he insisted. "You didn't lean on anyone to pull yourself up. You stood up entirely on your own." I looked out the passenger window, a very strange, warm feeling blooming in my chest. It wasn't romantic butterflies. It was the profound validation of being truly seen. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. That night, I called my dad. "Dad, I think I want to bring you out to LA to live with me eventually." He chuckled. "I'm not going to be a burden on you, kiddo." "You could never be a burden, Dad. We'll figure it out later. Right now, I just need you to focus on yourself." Lying in bed, I thought about a future whose shape was still completely unformed, and for the first time, I wasn't terrified of it. That month, The LA branch finally stabilized. The petty internal drama drastically decreased. The staff respected my management style. I no longer had to stay at the office until 11 p.m. I had time to cook a proper dinner, time to sit quietly and watch the city lights flicker on. I realized that true freedom isn't about being able to do whatever you want. It's about choosing the rhythm of life that perfectly fits your soul. On a Friday afternoon, the regional director called me into her office. She handed me an official promotion letter. "The executive board is thrilled with how you've handled the HR restructuring," she said with a bright smile. "You performed far beyond our expectations. You are officially the head of HR for this branch." I held the paper, my hands shaking slightly. I immediately texted my dad. "Dad, I got the official promotion." He texted back instantly, "I always knew you would. I'm throwing a one-man tea party tonight to celebrate." I burst out laughing, tears rolling down my cheeks. That night, Viv took me out to celebrate. She raised her glass of sparkling water, a toast to the future director of human resources. I glared at her playfully. "Keep your voice down." Viv laughed. "Are you still terrified of people looking at you?" I shook my head. "No, I'm just afraid of getting arrogant." She nodded sagely. "Keeping yourself grounded. That's a good trait." Over dinner, Viv casually mentioned, "Tom asks me about you all the time." I froze. "What does he ask?" "Asks if you're eating properly. If you're working too late." Viv sighed. "Don't overthink it. I'm not saying he's a saint. I'm just saying he's respectful, he's not pushy, and he genuinely cares. But ultimately, this is your call." I returned to my apartment and opened my purse to find a small, artisanal box of pastries. Tom had dropped them off at reception earlier with a note. "Congratulations on the promotion." Holding the box, I felt my defenses soften, just a fraction. I texted him, "Thank you, Tom. I owe you a coffee to celebrate." He replied, "I'll be waiting." Back in Chicago, Chase was settling into his new reality. His new company was smaller, the salary significantly lower, but he was assigned practical, hands-on work. He no longer had midnight strategy sessions. He no longer attended endless networking dinners. At 5 p.m., he went home to cook dinner for his mother. Eleanor sat in her armchair, watching him struggle in the kitchen, sometimes chuckling. "You used to complain when Maya made this dish too salty." Chase lowered his head. "I know, Mom." She sighed. "You learned too late." One day, he brought her a bowl of soup. She looked at him and said, "Chase, do not use your self-improvement as an excuse to try and win Maya back. It's good that you're changing, but don't ever think that just because you've changed, she owes you a second chance." Chase nodded, his eyes red. "I wouldn't dare think that, Mom." At night, he sat alone in the living room, scrolling through old photos on his phone. Wedding photos, vacation photos, candid photos of Maya standing in the kitchen. For the first time, he noticed something horrifying. In all those photos, Maya was smiling with her mouth, but her eyes were completely dead. He had never once looked closely enough to notice. One evening, he texted me, "Maya, my mom wanted me to ask how you're doing." I replied, "I'm doing well. Tell her I still think of her." "Okay, thank you." We left it exactly at that. Not a single unnecessary word. That weekend, I met Tom at a small, quiet cafe near my office. "How's the new role treating you?" he asked with a warm smile. "It's going better than I expected, actually." Tom smiled wider. "Your dad must be incredibly proud." I nodded. Tom went quiet for a moment, then looked at me earnestly. "Maya, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I want to be entirely transparent with you. I care for you deeply." I set my coffee mug down, my heart beating slightly faster. He continued, "I care for you the way a mature adult does. I'm not rushing you, and I'm not demanding anything. You don't need to give me an answer right now." I sat in silence for a very long time. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel a sudden, sweeping romance. I just felt a profound sense of respect that allowed me to breathe easily. "Tom," I said softly, "I just walked out of a very traumatic marriage. I don't want to jump into anything just because I'm afraid of being lonely." He nodded understandingly. "I know. I'm not here out of pity. And I'm not here just to fill a void. I'm here because I genuinely admire the woman sitting across from me right now. I went home with my mind buzzing. I called Viv. She listened to the whole story, stayed silent for a moment, and then said, "You don't need to answer to anyone, except yourself. Are you ready to open a new door?" "I don't know," I admitted. "If you don't know, then take your time," Viv advised. "No one is rushing you." A few mornings later, I got a frantic text from my cousin Haley. "Maya, your dad's health is declining. The doctors said his heart is getting weaker." I panicked and immediately called my dad. "Dad, what's going on?" "I'm fine," he insisted defensively. "Don't fly back here. I don't want you jeopardizing your new job." I started crying. "Dad, I don't care about the job if you aren't okay." He chuckled weakly. "I'd be happy to see you. For a visit. I'd be worried if you stayed forever." I marched into my regional director's office and requested 2 days of emergency leave. She nodded immediately. "Go. We've got things covered here." I flew back to Michigan. My dad lay in his bed, looking frailer than ever. I sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. "Don't worry about me," he whispered. "I plan on sticking around long enough to see you truly happy." I choked back a sob. "My happiness is you being healthy, Dad." That evening, I sat on the front porch, listening to the crickets. My dad slowly walked out and sat next to me. "Maya," he said quietly, "I think Tom is a good man." I jolted. "How do you know about Tom?" He smiled knowingly. "He called me to ask how you were doing. I can tell a decent man just by the sound of his voice." I looked down. "I'm just not ready yet, Dad." He nodded. "That's perfectly fine. You don't need to marry anyone for me to have peace of mind. As long as you are living a dignified life, that's all I need." The day I flew back to LA, Chase called me. "Maya, Haley told me your dad wasn't doing well. I was planning on flying to Michigan to see him." "There's no need, Chase," I said firmly. "He's stabilizing. I just wanted to check on him." "Checking on him over the phone is enough." He fell silent, then said, "Maya, I don't expect you to ever come back to me. I just want you to have a good life." Hearing that, a massive weight lifted off my shoulders. I dove straight back into work in LA. I didn't allow myself to overthink things, but one night, I received a text from Tom. "How was the trip back to Michigan?" I replied, "My dad is doing much better." He responded, "I'm so glad to hear that. When you have some free time, let me cook you some chicken soup." I smiled at my phone. "You're a terrible cook, Tom." "Then you can cook for me." I realized then that I wasn't as closed off as I used to be. I wasn't terrified of love anymore. I was just taking my time. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about my dad, about Chase, about Tom, and about myself. I no longer viewed myself as a woman who had been discarded. I saw myself as a woman actively choosing her own life. I flew back to Los Angeles, feeling heavier than when I left. My dad insisted he was fine, but I knew his body was failing him. Every time I heard a faint cough through the phone, my heart clenched. I started saving every penny I could, cutting out all unnecessary expenses. I was laser-focused on the day I would move him out to California to live with me, even though I hadn't figured out all the logistics yet. The new branch was hitting its busiest season. I was hiring aggressively, overhauling training protocols, and restructuring the corporate handbook. Some days, standing in front of the project whiteboard staring at the metrics, my head would spin. I remembered Viv's warning, "Don't turn yourself into a machine." But I also knew that if I didn't grind now, I wouldn't have the financial leverage to take care of my dad later. One afternoon, I received a phone call from Chase's mother. "Maya? Could I bother you for a minute?" I paused. "Of course, Mom. What is it?" Chase told me, "Your dad's health is failing. I want to fly out to Michigan to visit him." I was silent for several seconds. "Let me ask my dad first. Mom, I don't want to make things awkward for you," she said, her voice full of regret. "I just feel like I owe you so much." I bit my lip. "Please don't say that, Mom. I'll call you right back." I called my dad and told him Eleanor wanted to visit. He chuckled softly. "If she's making the effort, don't stop her, Maya." I nodded, though my mind was a tangled mess. A week later, Eleanor and Chase flew to Michigan. I took a personal day and flew back a day early to prepare. When they arrived, my dad walked out to greet them with a warm, welcoming smile. Eleanor held a gift basket, her eyes red. "Hello, Arthur. I came to see how you're doing." My dad nodded graciously. "Please, come inside." Inside the house, the atmosphere was incredibly tense. Eleanor looked at me, her voice shaking. "Maya, I am so sorry. I don't know what else to say." I replied softly, "Mom, please don't." She turned to my dad. "Arthur, I am so deeply sorry that I failed to raise a decent son." My dad shook his head. "What's done is done. We all have our own paths to walk." Chase stood in the corner of the room, not daring to look at me for too long. When we stepped out into the backyard, he muttered, "Maya, I'm sorry for dragging my mom here." I shook my head. "It's fine. My dad isn't bothered by it." He sighed heavily. "I just wanted to do one thing right, for once." I cooked a simple lunch for everyone. Eleanor placed a piece of fish on my dad's plate. "Eat up, Arthur. Keep your strength up." My dad smiled. "Thank you, Eleanor." Watching them, my emotions were a chaotic blur. I wasn't angry anymore, but I didn't feel any lingering closeness either. Before they left, Eleanor grabbed my hand. "Maya, if you ever need absolutely anything in the future, please tell me." I nodded, but made no promises. Standing by the gate, Chase said, "Maya, I'm genuinely happy to see you doing so well." "I hope you do well too, Chase," I replied. "Take good care of your mom." Flying back to LA, I was utterly exhausted. I texted Viv. Chase's mom visited my dad. She called me immediately. "Are you okay?" I offered a sad smile to the empty apartment. "I'm better than I thought I'd be." Viv let out a long sigh. "That means you've truly let go." That night, Tom called. "Maya, your dad told me Eleanor came to visit." "Yes." "Did it make you uncomfortable?" "A little bit, but not overwhelmingly so." Tom was quiet for a moment, then said, "I just want you to know that I have no intention of intruding on your past. I'm only standing in your present." Hearing that, a deep sense of calm washed over me. "Tom, I'm just not ready to make any promises yet." "I don't need promises," he replied smoothly. "I just need you not to lock the door on me." I didn't answer immediately. I knew I was no longer terrified of opening the door. I just didn't know where it would lead. One evening, I had to stay late at the office. When I finally walked out, a torrential downpour had hit Los Angeles. I stood under the building's awning, trying desperately to hail an Uber, but everything was surging or unavailable. My phone was on 1% battery. Right then, a car pulled up to the curb. The passenger window rolled down. It was Tom. "Get in." "Maya, the rain is too heavy." I hesitated for a split second before getting in. During the drive, he didn't barrage me with questions. He just turned on some soft jazz and focused on the road. Staring out at the rain-streaked window, my heart felt incredibly secure. When he pulled up to my apartment complex, I said, "Thank you, Tom." He smiled warmly. "I'm just happy I got to drive you home." I stood on the sidewalk, then turned back before he pulled away. "Tom, I don't want you waiting for me forever." "I'm not waiting," he said simply. "I'm walking with you. If you walk slow, I walk slow. If you speed up, I speed up." I didn't say anything else. I walked into my apartment, closed the door, and leaned my back against it for a long time. I realized I was no longer a woman terrified of happiness. A few mornings later, I got a text from Haley. "Maya, your dad is doing incredible. The doctors said his heart rate is totally stable. He just needs to avoid stress." I let out a massive sigh of relief and called him. "See?" He laughed through the phone. "I told you I was too stubborn to die." I laughed with him, tears streaming down my face. That night, I asked Tom out to dinner. "Tom," I said directly, "I want to be perfectly clear. I am not looking for a replacement for anyone." He nodded seriously. "I am not a replacement. I'm just Tom." I burst out laughing. It was the first time I had laughed that freely in front of a man who wasn't my ex-husband. Back in Chicago, Chase finalized the sale of the luxury condo. He bought a much smaller apartment closer to the hospital to make caring for his mother easier. Eleanor was growing weaker by the day. Some days, she was completely lucid. Other days, she was too exhausted to even speak. One evening, she grabbed Chase's hand and whispered, "Chase, I owe Maya so much." He nodded, tears pooling in his eyes. "I know, Mom." She sighed deeply. "If you ever cross paths with her again, do not try to drag her back. Let her live her own life." Chase didn't answer. He just squeezed her hand tighter. A few weeks later, Chase called me. "Maya, my mom's condition deteriorated rapidly. The doctors say she doesn't have much time left." I sat in stunned silence, my heart constricting. "She asked about you. She wants to speak to you." I closed my eyes. Put her on the phone. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Maya, can you hear me? I'm here, Mom. I wouldn't dare bother you, but I just wanted to tell you I love you." Tears flooded my face. "I love you too, Mom. I am so sorry for everything I put you through." "Nobody put me through anything, Mom. I made my own choices." "I'm so happy you're doing well," she wheezed. "Do not ever come back for me. I don't need it." I bit my lip, unable to form words. The call ended. I sat completely still for a very long time. I realized an entire era of my life had officially, undeniably closed. No screaming, no resentment, just a belated but dignified goodbye. A few weeks later, Eleanor passed away. Chase texted me, "Maya, my mom passed away. I am not asking you to fly back for the funeral. I just wanted you to know." I sat in silence. I called my dad. My dad sighed heavily. "She suffered her whole life. Send him my condolences." I texted Chase back. "My deepest condolences to you and your family. May she rest in peace." He replied, "Thank you." I did not fly back to Chicago. I had no role there anymore. I lit a small candle on my balcony in Los Angeles and whispered into the night air, "Rest well, Mom." I cried not out of a devastating sense of loss, but for the profound grace that had passed through my life, leaving an incredibly deep scar. A month later, Chase called me. "Maya, I'm moving to Los Angeles." I was shocked. "Why are you moving here?" "I got a job offer out there. I need a completely fresh start." He quickly added, "I'm not going to look for you. I just wanted to give you a heads up, so you aren't startled if we ever bump into each other on the street." I nodded, even though he couldn't see. "Okay. I wish you the best." We hung up. My heart didn't flutter with panic or residual feelings. I simply recognized that our relationship had fully transitioned into that of two strangers who used to know each other intimately. One afternoon, my dad sat on my balcony, watching the neighborhood kids playing in the street below. "Maya," he said thoughtfully, "you look different now." "Different how, Dad?" "You don't walk around with your head down anymore." I smiled. I bowed my head enough for one lifetime. "Do you ever regret that I got a divorce?" I thought about it for a long, honest moment. "No, Dad. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am today." He nodded proudly. "Then you chose right." That evening, Tom stopped by. "Maya, I'm flying back to the Midwest for a few days," he said. "My mother is ill." I paused. "Go be with her. Call me if you need absolutely anything." He looked at me, his eyes incredibly gentle. "I don't need you to carry any burdens for me, Maya. I just want you to know that no matter where I go, I'm always coming back to you." I nodded. I didn't beg him to stay, and I wasn't terrified of losing him. I knew that someone who truly wants to stay will always stay. A week later, Tom returned. My dad laughed. "You were only gone a few days, but it felt like a year." Tom smiled warmly. "I missed home." Watching the two of them, I felt a bizarre sensation in my chest. It wasn't the gaping void of an abandoned woman. It was a simple, profound feeling of wholeness. One night, Tom and I sat on the balcony drinking tea. "Tom," I said softly, "I can't promise that I'm completely in love with you yet, but I promise I am done running away." He smiled. "That's more than enough for me." On the other side of the city, Chase sat in a small, rented studio apartment eating takeout. He opened his phone, scrolled through my old text messages, and finally deleted the entire thread. He no longer harbored any delusions of winning me back. He only hoped to live the rest of his life as a decent man, so as not to entirely disrespect the memory of the woman who had carried him through his darkest years. As for me, I stood in my kitchen cooking a pot of soup for my dad. He was sitting in the living room watching the evening news. Tom sat at the kitchen island, reading a newspaper. It was an incredibly mundane, ordinary life, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was no longer the discarded, $4,000 a month wife, relegated to the sidelines of a $20,000 a month husband's life. I was Maya, a woman who had pulled herself up by her own bootstraps, built her own career, chose her own path, and finally, gave herself the ultimate permission to be at peace. If you have walked alongside Maya to this very last line, you have likely realized one crystal clear truth. Happiness does not come from clinging desperately to someone who no longer values you. It comes from having the courage to let go of a dead life, to save a new one. Maya didn't change her life by relying on another man. She didn't achieve success through bitter revenge. She didn't find peace by harboring endless resentment. Maya did exactly 3 simple things that very few people have the courage to do. She stopped enduring abuse, she established ironclad boundaries, and she patiently rebuilt her own soul. Out in the real world, there are millions of people living exactly like the early chapters version of Maya, carrying impossible burdens, enduring toxic environments, sacrificing themselves until they are entirely depleted, and then blaming themselves for being weak. If this story resonated with you, please remember, you are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are simply returning to yourself the fundamental right to live with human dignity. Do not wait until you are completely drained to let go. Do not wait until you have lost every ounce of your self-respect to wake up. Start with one small step today. Say no to the things that actively harm you, dedicate your time to the people who genuinely love you, and start investing in your own life. We created this story not just for entertainment, but to remind everyone listening that you are not alone in your trauma. There are countless people out there, silently enduring the exact same pain as you. If this story helped you see yourself, helped you feel understood, or gave you even a tiny fraction of the courage needed to live differently, then it has fulfilled its purpose. Please share this story with a friend who is exhausted, who feels trapped, or who believes they have no way out. Who knows? You might be the person who helps them wake up from a nightmare much sooner than they would have on their own. Thank you for listening, for staying until the very end, and for giving this story a chance to spread. If you'd like us to continue creating content that uplifts and empowers the community, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with anyone who might need some encouragement today. You do not have to live this life completely alone, and you absolutely deserve a life filled with peace.